greedily. The water was dirty, bitter, foul. Storms struck with brutal force. The wind nails cracked, her fingertips split, blood fell and were instantly swallowed by the desert wet. Yet even that quickly evaporated in the balls of her feet burned. Yet she didn't stop. Yet in them glimmered a spark of hope and gold. Alia's steps faltered. Alia was driving alone, heading far away from the city toward a remote destination. Along the way, there were no villages, no shade, only endless sand. Suddenly, smoke rose from the engine, and with a violent jolt, the car came to a halt. Alia tried again and again to restart it, but all in vain. Her heart began to sink. She stepped out of the car and looked around. There was nothing but sand. In her heart, a terrifying thought whispered. For a few moments, she stood beside the car, but then she gathered her courage and started walking forward. Each step on the scorching sand felt like walking on fire. The soles of her feet burned, yet she didn't stop. After hours of walking, suddenly she spotted an old house in the distance. A ray of hope flickered within her. She hurried toward it. The door was half broken. Inside, she found old utensils, decayed furniture, and dust-covered walls. She called out, "Is anyone here? Please, help me." But a deathly silence hung in the air. Despair took hold of her. She stepped outside again and walked on. Now her thirst grew worse, her tongue turned dry, and her body weakened. The terror of the desert seemed to be swallowing her very steps. Alia kept walking across the merciless desert sands. The sun blazed down with such intensity it felt as if the sky itself was raining fire. Her lips were parched, her throat scraped like it was full of thorns, and her tongue clung dryly inside her mouth. Every step felt like placing her feet on glowing embers. Her body was drenched in sweat, yet even that quickly evaporated in the blistering heat. Her head swam, vision blurring under the weight of thirst. More than once she thought of collapsing and letting death take her, but the stubborn will to live forced her forward. At last, she spotted a withered tree standing alone in the distance. She dragged herself beneath its thin shadow, but the shade was weak, barely a veil against the burning sun. Whispering under her breath, she murmured, "Oh God, please, send me some help." After a while, she pushed herself up again. Now hunger joined thirst in its cruel assault. Her stomach felt like an empty void, hollow and aching. The wounds on her feet had deepened from rubbing against the rough sand. Drops of blood fell and were instantly swallowed by the desert floor. Hours passed. Then, in the distance, a faint shape appeared. At first, she thought her mind was deceiving her. But as she drew closer, she realized it was an old well. Her heart leapt with desperate hope. She leaned over and peered inside. There, at the bottom, lay a small pool of water. Driven by thirst, she grasped the walls and tried to climb down. But the rough stones betrayed her footing. Her body slipped. A piercing scream tore through the silence of the desert. Driven by thirst, she grasped the walls and tried to climb down. But the rough stones betrayed her footing. Her body slipped. A piercing scream tore through the silence of the desert. A sharp crack tore through her arm, her bone had broken. A scream burst from her lips as searing pain flooded her body. A sharp crack tore through her arm, her bone had broken. A scream burst from her lips as searing pain flooded her body. When she looked up, the faintest glimpse of the sky seemed impossibly far away. For a time, she lay there half-conscious, drifting in and out. When awareness slowly returned, her eyes caught sight of something glimmering. A shallow puddle of water collected in a corner. Her thirst roared back with merciless force. Cradling her injured arm against her chest, she dragged herself closer. She bent down and drank greedily. The water was dirty, bitter, foul. Yet to her it tasted like life itself. Strength seeped back into her body, just enough for her to rise. She pressed her hands against the damp walls and tried to climb. Again and again, her fingers slipped against the sand and moss. Her nails cracked, her fingertips split, blood streaking the stone, but still she clawed upward. Each attempt ended in another fall, yet the stubborn spark of survival kept her going. Alia staggered to her feet once more. But now, another fear gnawed at her heart. This desert held more than hunger and thirst. Somewhere within its silence, a darker secret was waiting. As evening settled, the desert's heat slowly faded. The sun dipped low, painting the sand in shades of crimson and gold. Alia's steps faltered. Her body swayed with exhaustion. She thought she couldn't take another step, until, suddenly, a shadow appeared in the distance. At first, she thought it was another mirage, a cruel trick of her failing mind. But as it drew closer, her heart jolted. It was a young man. His clothes were caked in dust, a wooden staff in his hand. His eyes carried fatigue, yet in them glimmered a spark of hope. With a trembling voice, Alia whispered, "Who are you?" The young man spoke gently. "My name is Dud. I lost my way here too." Alia blinked, unsure if she could believe him, but Dud stepped closer and offered his arm for support. "If we walk alone," he said, "this desert will kill us." Side by side, they began to walk. Dud carried a small bottle with only a few sips of water left. Without hesitation, he handed it to her. Night descended quickly. The desert grew colder, winds biting against their tired bodies. They huddled together in the shadow of a sand dune, shivering. Alia whispered, "I don't know if we'll even live to see the morning." The night was still heavy with silence when a sudden roar shook the desert. The ground seemed to tremble, and the air filled with a furious howl. Dud's eyes shot upward, alarm flashing across his face. "It's a sandstorm. Get down now," he shouted. Alia's heartbeat thundered in her chest. The storm struck with brutal force, the wind howling like a wild beast. Step by step, they moved toward the distant glow. Each stride felt like an eternity, their bodies heavy with thirst and exhaustion. The sand crunched beneath their worn shoes, and the cold night air bit into their skin. But the light ahead kept pulling them forward, a fragile thread of hope in the endless desert. As they drew closer, the glow grew brighter. Alia's heart pounded. "Dud, it looks like fire," she whispered. Indeed, a small flame flickered against the dark horizon. Around it, the faint outlines of walls appeared, an abandoned village half buried in sand. The dusk made the desert even more terrifying. Waves of sand swirled all around, and Alia and Dud were weakening from exhaustion. The darkness had made the desert even more terrifying. Waves of sand were swirling all around, and Alia and Dud were growing weak from exhaustion and thirst. Suddenly, a rumble was heard from above, the sound of a helicopter's blades. Amidst the clouds of dust and sand, a faint white and yellow light appeared. Dud held Alia's hand tightly, and together they looked up at the sky. Beneath the helicopter, the rescue team began throwing down ropes, shouting loudly, "Here we are! Grab the rope! We'll get you out!" The helicopter's blades were spinning fiercely in the wind, and every moment amid the clouds of dust was dangerous. But the team held Alia and Dud firmly and slowly lifted them upward. Once inside the helicopter, Alia took a deep breath, tightly held Dud's hand, and said, "We're safe." With the wind beneath them, they began flying out of the desert, leaving the sand and dangers behind, and in the silence of the wasteland, a new light of hope brightened their lives.